Awesome. Yeah, there's some great intros. It's great to hear, like Rooster said there, everyone's background and how we got to this point. So if you go back and sort of listen to our trailer or our little description and you've heard our little intros there, you'll understand what our vibe is. So we're kind of going for trying to build a community, a tribe, get some information out there based on sort of the primal ancestral kind of concept of looking back at our evolution and our genetics and sort of saying what we've done back then was quite good. It's developed almost the perfect specimen for this planet. We probably need to go back and look at those ancestral principles and work out what they are and add them in to today's sort of modern environment. So I guess sort of kicking off our theme, sort of almost talking about reprogramming the everyday man or the modern man, sort of based around sort of evolution and ancestral living. So I guess for years, you kind of told you get certain genes from your parents, you get certain traits, you get your eye color, you get height, you might have some predispositions to some things like heart disease, diabetes, cancer, those kind of things. But, whilst that is true, environment and sort of lifestyle behaviors can really contribute to expressing those genes in a way either good or bad. And then sort of, so if we've got genes for expressing muscle development. So if you don't use those genes, you're not going to develop muscle. If you go out and you train, you're going to develop those muscles. So lifestyle and environment are a big factor in how our genes are expressed, I guess, is what we're trying to get at. So like I said, we've kind of got the perfect blueprint here, the perfect human. What have we been doing wrong? I don't want to start on a negative, but I know we really want to be positive on this podcast. And I guess towards the end, we'll talk about sort of how we can kind of fix a few issues and maybe several takeaways, 3 or 4 little easy things that we can take away from the episode today and go, okay, well, I'm going to try and introduce these things and improve my life. But I guess the first question I want to ask is, what do we need to fix? I mean, Smithy, you've been in AMBO, you've seen a few things out there, you've probably seen a lot of illness and disease. How do we fix or how do we reprogram the modern man to be better, express our genes as they were intended?
I think you've hit the nail on the head, and it's hard to nail down one thing that we've done wrong. I think it's a combination of things, and I think, as you've pointed out, it's a shift away from natural ancestral health towards modern life. And I think if we look at the health statistics, if we go back to the 1950s, we had single-digit numbers for people carrying chronic disease. Now in Australia, it's 1 in 2. So 50% of all our population, children included on average, carry a chronic disease. So clearly we're going off the rails somewhere, and it's a number of things which we'll delve into.
I guess that 50% stat too, if you look at testosterone. In 1950s, we had double the testosterone we have now. So obviously something's going wrong. What have we done over the last sort of 50 to 70 years that has produced chronic illness, dropped our testosterone, and how do we fix it?
Basically, our genetic makeup, our genetic structure is the same as what it is.
Hasn't changed
when we were living in caves.
That's right, yeah.
And we spoke about this a few weeks ago, how we are still the perfect specimen. But as you were saying, lifestyle or environmental factors are changing that uniqueness. No longer do we live in a cave and our days revolved around light and the search for food or nutrition.
Hunt, yep.
The hunt and exercise, not for the purpose of exercising, but exercise in association with hunting or gathering. Like the walk and the sprint and the spear throw or something like that.
Picking up a rock, building your shelter. I think, ancestral man would have looked at us and gone, we're going into a big warehouse with stacks of weights to lift weights to be healthy. When, if you look at it, you like you say, we would have done those things. Sprinted, lifted heavy things to survive.
Gone to bed when the sun went down,
Yep.
Didn't eat maybe until early afternoon when food was caught.
A bit of intermittent fasting probably.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll get on to these topics. I mean, they're definitely topics for a podcast. I guess framing where we want to go with it, we'll touch on these other topics as we go along.
You know, and in your realm there, Mickey, mental health, you know, I mean, you talk about the 50s or even an earlier generation, you know, mental health, even I'm guilty of neglecting mental health. You know, I've always been predominantly a physical health person, and I've always sort of considered mental health, you know, she'll be right, you know. But I find as I got older, that part of my health I've noticed I've neglected that, you know, and I think that now is being more a recognised sphere within our health. Mick?
I totally agree with you, and I think that what's really interesting to explore then is sort of that transgenerational skill set or resilience. You know, like we deal with certain things in our own age demographic in a certain way. It's probably slightly better than what our own fathers did, but in a lot of ways we learn exactly to cope how they coped. And so I see a lot of consistency in sort of how our own fathers did things and then how their fathers did things. And I think that's the brilliance of coming together like this, because I know we're all passionate parents and we're trying to consciously parent in order to make sure that our next generations are able to deal with things like mental health as well as physical health in a productive way.
Yeah.
Just getting back to Jonesy's question, I think you know, if the question's being posed, or you know, what would be something? Why are we transgressing from health? What I think is a big change is you know, the ancestral man, if he needed food, he took some self-responsibility and he went and found some food. And in relation to health, I think what a lot of people now do is they hand that responsibility on to other stakeholders like their doctor or pharmaceutical companies, or, you know, even looking through the COVID period, you know, large masses of people have taken direction, I feel, and it's just my opinion, from the media. And I think that one thing I am, and I know we all are extremely passionate about, is have some self-responsibility for your health. Do your own research. If something doesn't work for you, then adjust it. There are other options out there that might work for you, and they don't have to be that you have a headache. You know, a simple example, I've got a headache, I'll take a Panadol. Well, have you got a headache because maybe your neck's out of alignment or something like that? So I think that would be something I think is hugely important, is for people to step up, take their health seriously, take some self-responsibility, and start to implement a lot of the things that I know we'll touch on through, you know, many, many podcasts to come.
It's a great point. I think if you look at society, we want a quick fix. We want the easy out. We want to go to the doctor.
Absolutely.
If our symptom is we have a headache, like you said, we go to the doctor and they'll prescribe us a pill. The doctor gives you 7 minutes. You describe your symptoms and you come out of there with a prescription. You walk over to the pharmacy and you go fulfill that prescription. I guess the whole COVID thing was similar. We wanted a simple approach. We had a set at the start of that. We need to eat better, move a bit more, go out in the sun. We could probably touch on mental health and having a community a bit further on. But if you have those things, you know, what's the worst outcome that could happen? Or will people get a bit better? But our healthcare system is a bit broken in that you go in, you get your 7-minute consult and you come out with a prescription, and that's an easy fix. Your symptoms are gone.
Yeah, the old prevention is better than cure.
Yeah,
theory.
And I guess that's what we have all done here, is probably either had an issue or some issues, and we've gone out and we've found the solution ourselves. Maybe we've had a little bit of help, but we've like Mickey said, we've taken control of our own health. We've gone out, we've found the solution, and can I use the word thriving? We're all thriving humans.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't even find the solution, but it's just the fact that you're willing to go out and do some research to try to find a solution. And like Mick said, have a go at something, experiment with something, whether that be food, or exercise, instead of just going down that easy option of popping a pill and thinking that's going to fix everything. I think what you said there, Mick, is spot on. People have neglected their own responsibility for their own health, and they leave that responsibility for governments or for medical health departments instead of taking that responsibility for themselves. And I think that's to the detriment of society, and I think that's become so abundantly clear in this whole COVID fiasco, with governments pushing their solutions to the problem. Whereas you just mentioned there, Chris, was there an advert that you saw on telly during COVID to recommend people go outside, get some vitamin D, take some vitamin C, exercise, sleep, have some good nutrition, smoke less, drink less?
Yep.
Did you see an advert about that? But instead, this whole lockdown process where they kept people inside. And you talked about
contributed to it, didn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I've had COVID, sort of just got over it recently, but I actually felt this urge to get out into the sun when I had it. I didn't want to be locked in my house. I needed to get out and get some sunshine, and that was just a natural urge that I had. I drank a lot of water. I took some treatments just to help speed the recovery up, but I knew that I needed to rest. I slept, I didn't train, and I just looked after my body. And I think people just need to take that responsibility for themselves. Not having to be spoon-fed by a government organisation with a narrative that, I don't know, can be questionable.
Is this a symptom of modern life in terms of we're all so busy now?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And this is one of the recurring things that you hear from a lot of people is, I don't have time.
Exactly, yeah.
I think if you look at even man going back to the 50s, like we touched on earlier, generally, usually the male would go out and be the breadwinner. But we had that more classic nuclear family more often with one partner staying at home and tending to the house and everything like that, which inevitably meant that as a family, I think everyone had a little bit more time to get things done. Whereas now the common theme seems to be everybody needs to work. Usually both partners in a Western society household will need to work in order to do things like buy a home and get ahead. And we've got time being taken up by technology. And I just feel like a lot of people possibly feel like they don't have the time to prioritise their own health, both physical and mental. And so I do feel like we've got this deferral now where we're almost looking for someone to spoon feed us health, for want of a better word. I think even if you look at the food we're eating now, there's a move towards more processed, more convenience food.
Yep.
One, because it's cheaper and easier to obtain, and two, because it's quicker.
Yeah.
So we just
highly palatable.
Exactly right. So they've got that combination
Addictive.
of fat,
Addictive, it's that
sugar, and
serotonin,
salt.
dopamine.
We know
Yep.
the exact combination we need to make that extremely palatable and almost addictive in nature when you talk about sugar as well.
Yeah. And food companies have admitted that there is a formula to create an addiction.
They sure have.
Yeah, with their foods.
Perfect combination of fat, salt, sugar.
I think maybe that's the first takeaway from the episode would be to reduce our processed foods.
Yes, absolutely.
Get out, get natural food.
I think what Smitty says is on the money. People are too busy now. I mean, you've got, mum and dad wake up early in the morning, get the kids off to school. They're on the road for an hour or so, going to work. They work all day. They come home. They might have half an hour to spend a bit of time with the kids, helping out with homework or kick the footy down the park, walk the dog, whatever. Come back, cook dinner. By the time 8:30's come around, if they're not already in bed, they are done. They don't want to sit down and research and go down a whole rabbit hole of investigation. So they rely on a mainstream news advice, and they don't have the time to look into it themselves, and that's really unfortunate. But it's our life, and I don't begrudge that on anyone, because people are just living and getting by as best they can. We are fortunate in the lives that we live and the careers that we've chosen, that we do have time to sit down and study things. But then I think to myself, well, I drive to work half an hour a day and then half an hour home. That's my research time. So I'll find a podcast or something that I'm interested in, or that I might find will help, something related to my health, and I'll sit down and I'll listen to it. And if I have to go back and listen to it again and take notes, I will. So I really think the individual needs to empower themselves when it comes to their health.
And the information is out there, like you say.
It is. Yep.
Sitting in a car is dead time.
It is.
You're listening to commercial radio, which is the worst.
I can't.
Right?
Can't do it.
30 minutes listening to a podcast, getting some information. Sorry, Mickey, if you go.
Is that not a great message to not only pass on to the listeners, but also to our own children, guys? That, no one will care about your individual health as much as you. So therefore, the most important person in your life is not anyone else. It's you. And, this notion of not having time, well, you've just disproved it, Rooster, because, you have 30 minutes getting to and from work. Most people have a period of time where they are travelling to some capacity. And I think that, it's just about making it a priority. We only get one shot at this.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing, and one of the topics I know we'll get to over the journey, is this epidemic of illness that's sweeping the globe, whether it be autoimmune disease, whether it be, the rates of cancer, mental health, whatever it is. And I think that if that doesn't articulate to people that they need to prioritise themselves, no one cares. Yeah, it's on you.
That's right.
So, you just have to make time for yourself. And I know that's something we've all passionately done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also the problem is, where are you getting your information from? If you use that half an hour drive, as Rooster used as an example, if you get that from the mainstream media, in Australia at least, the messaging is not around ancestral natural health.
Getting back to what we were.
At all. El Salvador did an amazing trailer when COVID came out, and it was all around natural health and lifestyle. They recommended sunlight. They recommended exercise, weight loss, eating high-quality food, engaging with the community, and basically getting out there and moving. And we're just not hearing that over here. So I think you have to be very discerning in where you're getting your information from. And if you're not, then maybe you're not getting the right message, or at least not in our opinion.
Yeah.
You're going to get a very skewed message.
Yeah, and mainstream media does have a negative influence. I've been keeping an eye out on the telly, on the odd chance that I'm skipping through something, say watching the footy or something, and there's some ads on TV. There are some ads there that are promoting, less fast foods, whatever, to reduce your fat build up and that sort of things, visceral fat. There are some things, but I just think that where they fall down is when there's a narrative behind, or an agenda behind something. So that example there of an El Salvador ad, maybe that government didn't have an agenda to pump out, a certain medication to its population that other governments have had. So therefore, the mainstream media were able to offer something against a Western sort of narrative, for want of a better term. But yeah, the mainstream media, it's imperative for people to dig deep and find other sources of information other than what they get on mainstream radio and the telly.
Is it because people are, sorry, Mick, is it because people are time poor? we did talk about it. We could use that 30 minutes in the car to get some more information. Like everything, do we want a quick fix? Do we want to go on the mainstream media and listen to, Sunrise tell us what the issues are, and then go, okay, cool, I'm happy with that. I'll go away and I go to work 9 to 5, come home. It's all, quick fix.
It's convenience.
Convenience.
Mainstream media is convenient.
Yeah.
You get having brekkie in the morning, you chuck on the telly or you chuck on the radio, and there's a convenience straight away. Boom.
Probably another takeaway would be look past the mainstream, look at some alternative therapies, dig a little bit deeper, do some more research for yourself. Sorry, Mickey, I cut you off there, mate. Off you go.
I think one of the major, if we look at the media and one of the campaigns that was driven through COVID, it's a great example of what you're talking about, Roo. And it was the major campaign across all networks. Not that I watch network TV very often, but I did see this. And it was, I'm getting the vaccine for this person. I'm getting the vaccine. I'm getting the vaccine for my neighbour. Or I'm getting the vaccine for my grandfather. Well, if we just take a moment just to calm ourselves down and just actually think through that process, it doesn't actually make any sense. And it makes about as much sense as me wearing protection to stop one of your wives falling pregnant. That's about how much sense it makes. I don't wear a condom so that you're having a sexual liaison with your wives and they don't get pregnant. I don't get a vaccine. It has absolutely no bearing at all on someone else getting sick. It never made sense. But all of these people passionately invested in this process. They thought they were doing the right thing, and a little bit of research, like we've all said, just a little bit of research into virology, epidemiology, just look into the fact that, okay, if I get this vaccine, am I keeping myself safe? Potentially. If I get this vaccine, am I actually keeping my neighbour safe? Absolutely not. And that's something I struggled with. I think that was a really questionable marketing campaign that certainly swept a lot of people in our country. And I'm interested to get your thoughts on that as well, guys.
Oh, mate, it was a brainwashing technique, really, wasn't it? It was, prey upon people's emotions of helping and protecting others to quantify a decision that was questionable, that could be questionable, depending on what stance you take on it all. Taking it back to the ancestral man, there just seems to be a modern society hang up on killing everything. So killing germs and bacteria and things like this, and going back to our ancestral man lived with parasites and germs and disease. We just seem to be distancing ourselves away from that. We can talk about in later podcasts our gut health, our natural biome. Where has that gone from our ancestral sort of health? And how has all the food and the chemicals and pollutants that we absorb affected that, and then therefore affected our health and definitely our mental health?
I'm glad you went to...
Is Chris putting his spray and wipe away there, or...?
I'm glad you went to diet. Let's diverge. Because I think that is probably one of the major issues we have currently. And we briefly touched on processed foods there, but getting back to what would be more of an ancestral, call it whatever you'd like, paleo diet. Mickey can touch on his dietary choices. That's a good one. But whatever sort of makes you thrive. But if you look at what we're eating now, it is far from what ancestral man would have eaten. We talk about sort of eating a good, range of natural, organic sort of things. We're not doing that anymore. We're finding a quick fix, processed food solution. Everything has
Yeah.
seed oils in it. And I guess maybe one of the takeaways that I would suggest from today's episode is reduce or get rid of your seed oils.
Mm.
Vegetable oils, canola, safflower, corn, soy, any one of those are a real issue that cause a lot of oxidative stress.
I mean, you're talking about diet there. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
But also cooking methods.
Cooking methods,
A lot of people just chuck on the old canola oil on the fry pan, heat it up.
vegetable
You know,
oil.
the carcinogen effect of heating those sort of oils.
Get it up to its smoke point.
Yep.
Past its smoke point. Yep.
I guess we can add it to the show notes, but one thing that really changed or opened my eyes was a video of how canola oil was made. Probably, I don't know, it might have been sort of 20 years ago, but the voiceover man is really gaslighting everyone, saying, look at how good this is. We are heating this, treating it with these lovely chemicals, and look at the waste that comes out of this and the beautiful oil that you get at the end of it. And it is horrendous. It put me off eating those oils ever again. And they're found in just about everything. Everything that's processed has vegetable oils, seed oils in it. Salad dressing, sauces, muesli bars. Just, we talked about it earlier. It's cheap and easy, but one of the things that really first opened my eyes was, the abundance of this product is everywhere, but it's really damaging to our health. Significant oxidative damage already from these oils, and then we talk about you heat them up and it makes them even worse.
Yeah. And I think the only way you can get away from this, like you mentioned, it's really in everything, is to eat unprocessed food.
Yes.
Eat fresh, natural food.
Yep.
As close to the source as you can.
Yep.
Because these omega-6 fatty acids, absolutely terrible. Like you said, they're so pro-inflammatory, and we're living in a society now where everyone is probably more inflamed than they need to be.
Yep.
And this, we'll probably do a podcast on it one day, but if you look at your omega-3, omega-6 ratio, we're nowhere near where we need to be and where ancestral man would have been back in the day. So, yeah, the solution is eat good quality fresh food.
Yeah.
Nothing out of a packet.
Yeah.
No, as little as possible.
Yeah.
And the reason why I bring up seed oils is because if you look at the ingredients in just about everything, if you were to remove seed oils, what you come back to is natural organic foods. And that's all the choice that you have if you're eliminating these seed oils. You get rid of them. That's the choice you have. So one easy option is to look at the ingredients list, and if vegetable oils are in there, you don't eat it. There's significant disruption to hormones, the immune system. There's links to, and like you said, we could talk about it in the future, skin damage. So the amount of vegetable oil that you have, if you then go out in the sun is harsher and burns you more.
Yes.
And there's also links to the increase in heart disease because, and we'll probably touch on this further down the track, and cholesterol and LDL, but one of the theories is because of the oxidative damage that these oils are causing, the macrophages, which are the immune system cells that come in and clean things up, if there's damage in arteries, those come in, fix things up, and leave the plaque or leave a scar, and that's causing the heart disease. So, and we talked about sort of 1950s. You kind of look at the time that these came in. Are they reducing testosterone, or is this the major cause of a lot of health issues? The decline in health from sort of 1940s, 50s onwards, you could make the correlation that processed foods are the cause.
And is that around the same time that food production became an industry?
Yes.
Where
Wrapped in plastic.
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So mass production of food, after World War II.
Yep.
And you sort of get the feeling that we're being fed shit in order to kill us. You know what I mean?
It's a whole cycle.
It feels like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, like society is being fed crap food, unnutritious. Is that a word? Unnutritious food,
which is making us
to
sick,
make us sick,
which relies
which
on the
therefore
pharmaceutical
provides the
company.
medical fraternity or the pharmaceutical company to thrive. It's this constant cycle of ill health that seems to be perpetuated in Western society anyway. Yeah, it's definitely concerning, mate. And, a lot of the you mentioned, Smitty, the chronic illnesses that we suffer today, weren't probably around back in those 1930s, 20s, or those sort of eras. It's a lot. Yeah, the whole food manufacturing business, it just seems to put profits before health. That's how I see it. But and here we are a little bit negative on this, but on a positive, there are a lot of people waking up to it. There are a lot of people, and we can talk about this, and Mick, you can vouch for it, having an alternative nutrition plan or a diet, for want of a better word. There are so many different nutrition plans out there, your ketos, your paleos, your carnivorous diet and that sort of thing. There are so many options there to try. Sometimes it's just a process of elimination, giving each one a go.
And what works for you?
What works for you?
Thrive,
yeah,
yes.
but I think just the basic thread amongst a lot of them are the removal of processed foods and complex carbohydrates.
Yep.
Whether it be your paleo, your high fat and high protein diets and things like that, or those, there seems to be a common theme amongst them where processed food's gone. And
yeah, you can get dogmatic about all the different approaches, or you can go with what works. And what seems to be working, or what seems to work for me, is reducing those processed foods.
Yeah, and I mean, Mick, you've gone down a paleo track. Tell us about how you got into that, and how, like, you're a triathlete or an ex-triathlete. How did that decision to go paleo affect your performance? Did it affect any other part of your life? Performance on the track, I mean.
I'll pull you up there. I didn't go paleo. I went plant-based. I reckon you've said that just to stitch me up. But, yeah, look, we, as a family, and I think chronic health will be something, or chronic illness will be something we'll explore, in much more detail. But a little over 5 years ago, we were confronted by a fairly challenging life experience when my wife was diagnosed with late-stage cancer. At the same time, we had our our second child. And so we dived headfirst into holistic health, and one of the things we explored was a change in nutrition, moving towards a plant-based diet, and a lot of the the benefits that came with that in terms of reducing acidity within the body, and just providing, I guess, an optimum base point for the body to heal itself. We're now 5.5 odd years down the line, thank God. And, my wife's absolutely thrived. She has defied the odds, absolutely. And, we have a really strong belief around that plant-based nutrition, and it being a great sounding board for people to heal. I think the one takeaway, or bringing it positive, bringing that positive spin to it, which we really want to do, is what I've always been really clear on is that this vessel that we're living within is the most amazing computer that we can ever, explore or investigate. And it is strategically designed to return to balance and homeostasis. And that, like we were saying earlier, that's just about you actually having some self-responsibility and doing some exploration. But the body is always giving you messages. It's always giving you signs and signals. And you can return to health from anything. That is my belief. She was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Her odds of surviving 2 years were between 9 and 21%. And, through a variety of methods, but certainly nutrition played an integral part. with God's grace, we're here 5.5 years down the line. So the body's amazing, guys. And I know we all agree with that. You know, it's always talking to you. It's always telling you what it needs. Like you said earlier, Rooster, you know, your instincts were to get out in the sun, you know, to get some vitamin D when you were feeling sick. And I think sometimes we just turn away from listening to that stuff.
Yeah. Sorry to label you with the wrong diet plan there, mate. I know it's a plant-based, more vegan. Do you call it vegan? A vegan style?
Yeah, look, vegan, plant-based.
Yep.
You know, I try not to attach to the labels.
Yeah, but and going back to that question about you know, your training performance, you know, and your consumption of protein and stuff like that. How did you go about ensuring that was maintained?
Well, look, I mean, I stopped. At the time that she fell ill, I stopped racing at that level pretty much at the exact same time, just by necessity. But you know, I still exercise, you know, pretty stringently daily. I push myself. I still like to push myself. It has been a balance. Obviously, it was something that, yeah, we hadn't explored a lot about, and getting that right balance of you know, the macronutrients, proteins, carbohydrates, good fats, and things like that has been something we've really had to play with. But you know, that probably wasn't something we explored too much prior to eating this way either. So we've got 2 young kids. They're obviously plant-based eaters as well. So we're quite vigilant with having their bloods checked regularly to make sure that their iron stores are where they need to be and things like that. And we're not rigid, guys. You know, we have dialogue regularly about, you know, do we see a point, or if I felt a necessity to have some fish or some red meat or something like that, if my body was telling me I needed it, I would do it. So I think having that flexibility, not being rigid in your thought processes, is also really important.
Yeah, definitely agree. Some people just get so hooked on following a
Dogmatic.
to the nth degree. You know, they just get so stringent and lose that flexibility, even to the point of enjoying life. You know, every now and then a chocky or a beer doesn't hurt. You know, it's all percentages. As long as the greater percentage of your life is living in a healthy way, you can input it with a little bit of flavour.
Yeah, I think it's about being consistent.
Absolutely.
You just want that overall consistency.
Yep.
Don't worry about a few little ups and downs here and there.
I wanted to circle back to, I wrote it down here. I don't know if this is what you might have been alluding to, Smithy, was sort of the mental aspect and possibly the breakdown of the tribe, as in, you know, we don't have that connection to people as much anymore. As the ancestral man, you know, we would have sat down at the end of the day with our hunt and celebrated with our tribe, sit down in front of the fire, danced, sang, talked, you know, probably talked some shit.
Yep. Well, you probably even consumed some hallucinogenic
maybe on the hunt they would have
substances.
Yeah, definitely, which created, you know, a lot of thoughts,
neural pathways,
things that we still sort of consider today, like gods and stars and things like that. You know,
but having that community and that trust in those amount of people probably helped their mental state. And is it possible that we've lost a little bit of that these days?
I reckon, mate, and I reckon that the word tribe, I see it as a negative and a positive word in today's society. I think the positive side of a tribe is what you're talking about, is being together with people you love, and talking and having that sense of community, eating together, exercising together, talking together, celebrating together, those sort of things. I think what's happened in recent times is there's a tribal shift has become where I belong to a tribe and your tribe doesn't matter to me anymore.
Like your tribe, so
I become a tribe v tribe thing, you know, and that to me I think has also been a breakdown of that tribal concept, you know, where we're now seeing or identifying certain tribes based on certain beliefs and an ignorance or a
Unwillingness to look at the other tribe.
exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
Do you think this is driven by technology? So
Yes.
if we go back one generation, we really interacted face to face or maybe over the telephone.
Totally.
Now I feel like a lot of our interaction is on social media platforms or things like that. And I think it's changed the nature of how we interact.
Yep.
And I think it's probably increased our tribalism, for want of a better word, possibly in a negative way. So I feel like sometimes people are at home now and they're spending a large amount of time on a device with activities that they would define as socialising.
Yep.
But maybe it's a lot less healthy in the way we're actually doing it, because we probably tend to interact a little differently when the person's not in the room with you. Perhaps something that we write on a keyboard or we type on our phone may be misconstrued. And I think it is breeding loneliness in a way. Even though we are interacting, we don't have direct human interaction. And so people are, in a way, desperate to attach themselves to a tribe.
Totally agree with
And
you,
they'll
mate.
absolutely just take on some of that sort of dogmatic tribal approach where they want to belong with this tribe, therefore they'll take on all of that tribe's beliefs, when maybe really their belief system is somewhere in the middle. And we've sort of lost the art of debate now, where we're really just we're almost attacking each other rather than talking things through, which I think if you're in a room with someone, you'll be more likely to do.
Yeah, definitely. And by social media, and I think Joe Rogan talks about this a lot on his podcast, is that via social media communication, we're not picking up those visual cues on a person's face, their expressions, when we are communicating with them. So we might be aggressively communicating with someone on a social media platform, but we're not seeing when that person receives that message how that's affecting them because we can't see their face. We can't see the pain. We can't see the anger. We can't see the sadness in their face. So, mate, I totally agree with what you're saying there. We've become so distant from recognising each other's human behaviour. And it's crazy. Like, I'll be sitting on the couch with my missus and we'll both be on our phones. And I think to myself, I should be talking to you, not sitting here talking shit on a social media platform that's probably corrupting my mind. I should be here bonding with you, talking shit with you. Doesn't matter what we're talking about.
Interacting,
and facing you and looking into your face, in your eyes, and communicating that way. And even my kids, the kids have their friends over to play. I will go into their bedroom and they're both sitting on the bed, and the girls got their phones in their hand, and they're actually talking to each other with other friends in the same room, but not verbally, by a social media platform. And my young bloke, he plays video games with his mates. And back in the day when we rode over our friend's house, knocked on his mum and dad's door and said, "Is Johnny able to play?" Yeah, cool. So, and you go out and ride your bike till 5:30. But now the kids, they get onto Fortnite or whatever game's being played, and they can actually put the headphones on like we are now, and they can communicate and play with each other from different suburbs.
Yeah.
And that is their meeting sort of forum now, and I guess for them it's a natural part of life. But for us that grew up, well, I'm so glad that I grew up in a time where there was no internet. I know life before internet. To me, I find it hard to deal with this whole social media and what you're talking about, Smitty, that the lack of connection with people. And I think, we touched on mental health before, and I totally agree. I think I can recall there have been studies where they've done studies on people's loneliness, and the concept of loneliness, the percentages within the population has maximised, in recent years. We are so much more connected, but we are now so much more lonely. That blows me away.
Is that a part of the issue for kids, do you think, guys, that I love that example, Roo, that you gave of when we were kids. I reckon I would have clocked up 30 or 40 kilometres a day on me bloody bashed up mountain bike getting to me mate's house. And
30 kilometres a day.
I was a fair athlete, Christopher. But as long as I was home by 6, you know, and I was there for a family meal with my parents. That was okay, but in terms of what you said, the example, I love it, was you went to your mate's house, you knocked on the door, you actually had to have an interaction with an adult.
Yeah,
right?
That's another thing.
Where you conversed and you asked a question and you received an answer and you learnt about manners and a lot of these values that were instilled in us. Kids don't have to do that these days.
That's right,
you
mate.
know, and I think that
sorry,
they're not developing that resilience. You know, they're not developing this ability to have communication on a level that we had it. And I think that's a big part of the issue that a lot of the kids are having. They're overwhelmed with social media. They're addicted to it and they love it, clearly, but it's so overwhelming for them.
Yeah.
Do you think every generation has this issue? I think our parents would have said the same thing.
I think so.
Oh, this Super Nintendo, this Atari, this is going to be the death of these kids, you know.
Even radio or telephone.
Yeah, the television.
I'm sure
these kids are just sitting in front of the
was a
television.
big one. Yeah.
I think every generation has an issue that comes up like this.
Yeah.
But you know, this one seems to be a lot bigger, doesn't it?
I guess it's just
how do you fix it?
Yeah, I guess this
break
one
that
is
cycle.
just its infiltration into our human basic communication.
Well, it's everywhere, isn't it? You
Yep.
you can't get around it, and it is stunting our ability to connect with other people. If I talked about in my intro being a teacher, an educator, I do some adult learning stuff. If I was to say I do my thing, okay, we've had 45 minutes, it's time for a break. The first thing people do is phones out.
Yeah.
And there's 20 people in a classroom sitting there with their phone out, and you're thinking, crazy.
It's crazy. You know what? I'm going back to a flip phone. I'm done with it. I went to the shop the other day and looked at buying an old flip phone. I think apparently you chuck your SIM card in, it just gives you phone calls and SMS. If it still runs on 4G, does that still mean it's because you can't have internet on it? There's no internet sort of option. It's just a phone and an SMS. It makes its calls based on 4G. Does that mean that it's still like connected, like GPS wise? Can I still be tracked?
Probably.
Right.
Yeah. That might be a topic for another episode, and we can dig into technology, phones,
EMF.
but
EMF,
Wow.
yeah.
5G.
all of it. But also, Jonesy, getting back to your statement before around technology, I think the other difference now is that it's absolutely, we're available 24/7. We have no break now. I remember when I was a kid, you wouldn't ring a friend's house on the landline after a certain time.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go calling your friend at 9:30 at night
Yeah.
because it would just be rude. So the family would have that evening
yeah.
really uninterrupted, and that would be family time. Of course, they probably would have watched some television.
Yeah.
But really now, even kids are getting bombarded by social media. Maybe they have a hard time at school. When we were kids, maybe once they got home, at least they got some relief from it. And maybe that's why youth mental health is suffering so much now, because it's unrelenting, because they might get home now and they might be copying an even worse time through social media channels, Facebook and all your other platforms.
Even people for work, you're still contactable. People can still flick you a message about work at 8:30 at night, and you get an email, and you kind of have to respond to it. I remember when I was first courting my wife back in the day, I'd have to ring, and I'd get her parents, like you were talking about. You'd ring them up, and you go, "Hello, no, she's out. Okay, can you leave a message that Chris rang?" And then you might not hear from them for 2 or 3, a day.
Yeah.
What?
But you also, going back to what Mick said, you would have picked up the phone and said, "Hello, Mrs. Smith."
Yes, you would have used
and
yeah.
These days, kids don't call you Mrs. or Mr. You are Dave, or you are Bob, or you're Jim. They go by your first name now.
Or maybe even no name. Just, hey, is so-and-so here? Can they play?
Yeah. I went to a mate's funeral a couple of weeks back, and he's sorry, not a mate's father's funeral. So his dad died. So his mum's there, and I went and saw her, and I gave her a hug, and sort of known her since we were young blokes, and I called her Mrs. So-and-so.
I still do that. Yeah.
And one of the other boys standing next to her said, "See, Mrs. So-and-so." here's another one. And she goes, oh, yeah, another one who calls me by Mrs. So-and-so. And it just showed how, like this old school mentality of acknowledging someone as a Mr. or Mrs. is still quite so important for that older generation. And to me, it's important. It was important, but now I think it's been watered down so much now that I just...
Do you think they would have pulled us up on it?
Oh, for sure.
You know, if you didn't use Mrs. Jones or whatever it was, and you'd said, "G'day, Catherine,"
Yep.
they would have said, "It's Mrs. Jones." Whereas we don't do that now. We let it slide.
We did let it slide, and maybe that's what we should have done. Say, hey, whoa,
It's our
whoa,
fault.
whoa,
It's our
whoa,
fault.
no, I'm Mr. So-and-so to you, all right? You know your place in this house, you know?
Back in.
Geez, we're sounding old now, lads.
Yeah, but you know what? There's old common decency and values and manners. Does that need to go in a modern society?
I think this all
don't
ties
think
in
so.
with this different generational use of technology and all the societal impacts that it has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and then if we take it back again to the ancestral man, you know, the little whippersnappers around the
Respect for your
cave,
elders. Yep.
you know, they would have had respect for their elders, and those old cavemen or the ancestral man, they would have been so valued for their knowledge and their wisdom.
Storytelling.
You know, exactly. Passing down of
tales
cultures and that sort of thing. Now we just throw them in a home and say, I'll go and see them on the weekend, and then,
So-
you know.
So what you're saying is us old fellas don't get the respect we deserve.
Well, our storyteller now is mainstream media. And unfortunately, mainstream media can be paid for, can be bought.
Yep.
So if you have enough money, you can really put out the message that you want. The everyday man, obviously, is not going to have enough money to pay to put out a message. But if you're a corporation,
Yep.
maybe your message is to eat my product, drink my product, use my product.
Yep.
It's not necessarily the best for us.
I was reading something from McCullough this morning that he was saying there's about a dozen companies in the world that control most of the food production.
Wow.
Imagine the power that they have.
Yeah.
Mainstream media, they've got.
Yeah. Well, the
Can I
message
say
I'd
they're
like to
gonna
put
buy
out
the
there today is that we can all take charge of our own food production in some capacity.
Yeah.
Obviously, everyone has a different ability to be able to produce food based on where you live and the sort of geographical area you're in and your space constraints. But I'd encourage everyone to just try and grow just one item if you can.
Something. Yeah.
Even whether it's just a herb or just a basic tomato plant or just some sort of natural food. Get your hands dirty, put your hands in soil, get in contact with nature, have a living plant inside or around your home, tend for it. It's a good way to spend time, and it's the best food you'll ever eat.
Yeah.
Some plants are really good at detoxifying.
Absolutely.
Mother's tongue, you can have that in your house. It's getting rid of toxins.
Milk thistle.
Yeah, but even herbs, even if you're living in an apartment, you can have a little herb garden on your ledge and tend to that.
Have we still got Mick?
Yeah, got you there. Got you, guys.
Okay, mate. Yeah, definitely the home vegetable growing, food growing, and food provision, I think is becoming it's getting a big push, mate, at today.
Yeah,
with people becoming aware of things like you just mentioned there about the food production being held by whatever percentage of corporations and that provision of processed foods. People are thinking, well, I'm going to start providing for my own.
Yeah, and even if you don't have the ability to do that, there are that many farmers markets in cities these days that you can go and get your fresh produce. You can get your fruit, your veggies, your meat, even sort of whatever you need. You can get.
Yep.
And you don't need to rely on big corporations to get your food because it's highly processed.
Yeah.
You get back to that processed food stuff.
I think that became quite apparent in the whole COVID lockdown thing, where your big corporations, including your food providers, had big budgets and massive profits, where your smaller independent growers and food providers struggled.
Yeah.
But
they were locked down. They couldn't get you. you couldn't even get to a farmer's market during COVID.
That's right.
It's crazy.
But I think people have woken up to it a little bit. They've seen, oh, hang on, why can the doors at a big supermarket here be open, and why can't I go to my growers market? What's going on here? So people are starting to look at, well, okay, maybe I need to just give the corporates a miss. Maybe I need to support my local grower.
Maybe this is one of the big positives that's come out of the last couple of years with COVID and all the things we've been through with lockdowns and poor health. Maybe one of the biggest benefits will be people's realisation that we can, well, one, we should take control of our own health, and two, one of the ways to do that is through eating better and perhaps producing some of our own food.
I totally agree, mate. I reckon there's an awakening. Yeah. There is an awakening amongst society, particularly Western society, that things need to change.
Yeah. And I think that what Smithy said there, that's probably a good takeaway. Sort of, I've written sort of 3 takeaways from what we're sort of getting a bit long in the tooth now of how long we wanted to go for. But sort of the 3 takeaways that I've written down here is sort of, Mickey talked about it, take responsibility for your own health. And that means getting out, moving more, look at what you eat. I guess number 2 would sort of be get rid of our processed foods. And I talked about seed oils. So if you wanted to start there, removing seed oils from your diet is a good start, because seed oils, vegetable oils are in pretty much every processed food. So if you remove those, we've got 2 there. And then I think the 3rd one was listening to your body, getting out in the sun, what you eat, moving more. I did a little sprint workout this morning. I got in the pool, it was freezing cold. I felt good. So those kind of things, when you're active and you're moving around, I think listening to your body and being able to interpret what it's telling you, intuitive is what Ancestral Man would have been. I think sort of they're kind of three takeaways from today's podcast.
Yeah, I think if we're going to wrap things up, it's we've covered a broad sort of, haven't gone into too much detail on things, and we've done that for a reason, because we've got a lot of ideas that we want to express. We've got plenty of other podcasts that we can do in the future that we really want to nut some things out on. Give
a broad overview to everyone of sort of what we're about, and I think
I hope people haven't found it too sort of tedious, but we're sort of on the same page with regards to a lot of our health ideas, and we just
we want to get the message out there. I think we've sort of all stumbled upon a health approach that works for us, and getting it out there. I was actually listening to, I don't know if you guys have seen The Liver King too much. Probably not Mickey Mack because he's a vegan, but The Liver King said, he said in the podcast I was listening to, if I didn't get this information out to people, I would be a piece of shit. Which I guess it means, look, I know this stuff, and I probably should be getting it out to people, because and if I'm not, I'm not doing the people out there of the community a service, because I know this stuff. I've looked into it.
Yeah, well, that's a good point to finish up on.
Yeah,
I think that's a great spot to wrap it up.
Yeah. Mick, do you want to finish with anything?
No, good stuff, guys. Looking forward to the podcast to come.
Beautiful. Good work, team.